Mhm. All right, so welcome everyone to the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center's Grand Rounds. Today we are very excited to have a topic which will hopefully be very interesting to everyone, both professionally and personally. And we have one of GW's own, neurologist Richard Cytowic, MD, MFA, and he's best known for returning synesthesia back to mainstream science after decades of disbelief. When he rediscovered it in 1979, his neurology colleagues dismissed the trait as bogus, warning that it was too weird and new age and would ruin his career. His fourth book about it won the Montaigne Medal. Now, the pioneering researcher explores the ever-present problem of screen distractions and what we can do to help them from overwhelming our dwindling attention span in his latest book from MIT Press, Stone Age Brain in the Screen Age. Dr. Cytowic is a clinical professor in the Department of Neurology and Rehabilitation Medicine in the GW School of Medicine and Health Sciences. He holds an MFA in creative writing from American University and is an alumnus of Duke, Wake Forest, GW, along with London's National Hospital for Nervous Diseases. He's the author of Synesthesia, The Man Who Tasted Shapes, The Neurological Side of Neuropsychology, and with David M. Eagleman, the Montaigne Medal winner, Wednesday is Indigo Blue, Discovering the Brain of Synesthesia, all published by the MIT Press. His work has been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and his TED-Ed talks on what percentage of your brain do you use and what color is Tuesday, exploring synesthesia, have garnered over 6 million plays. So let's see if we can get 6 million plays for this one too. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard. I'll turn it
Thank
over
you.
to
My
you.
pleasure. At least it'll be 6 million and one.
There you go.
So you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, a new crop of residents. Hello, everyone. But you have a new set of responsibilities. How will you juggle them all and get everything done that's asked of you? You've all heard that you should get your sleep, unplug, and breathe. But from the brain's perspective, here's why you can't afford not to and what you actually can do. Let's face it, residency is mentally, physically, and spiritually grueling. It demands enormous attention, emotional resilience, and cognitive flexibility, resources that the human brain never evolved to expend full tilt 24/7. Try to do that, and I guarantee you will burn out. Well, here we are, downtown DC, scampering about trying to meet all the demands pulling our attention in different directions. I want to talk first about your mental life. Few people think about the way that they think. That kind of metacognition feels weird, frankly, but it's my profession. It may surprise you to learn that your brain operates within a fixed bandwidth of energy, one that no amount of kale, yoga, or Sudoku puzzles can increase. If we can't expand that limit, then we have to learn how to work within it wisely. You will feel this limit every single day in clinical practice. After 20 charts, 4 consults, and 1 grumpy attending, your brain energy budget will be screaming enough. Now, contrary to popular belief, we don't multitask. We task switch. And every switch from A to B and back again, or from A to C or D, exacts a metabolic cost. These costs add up. Listening to one person, for example, takes up half your cognitive bandwidth. Following two, that's nearly impossible. And switching attention back and forth is among the most expensive things that you can ask your brain to do. Now, the brain comprises just 2% of the body's weight, but it consumes 20% of our calories. Most of that energy is spent maintaining the physical structure, pumping sodium and potassium ions across membranes. And that leaves very little energy left over for actual cognition, which is what everybody is interested in. I've left this slide intentionally blank. If you're looking at it instead of paying attention to me and listening to what I'm saying, then you've proven my point of how distractible we are by external stimuli, like this image on a screen. Consider how we obsess over what we put in our bodies: organic, non-GMO, no preservatives or artificial colorings. But we never take notice of the mental garbage we let in through the senses. People swipe and scroll mindlessly, unaware of the damage they're doing to themselves. Because screens are like secondhand smoke, affecting everyone in the line of sight. You've all been there. Airport lounges, waiting rooms, the wall-mounted monitors in your face demand to be looked at. Trying not to look at them and their moving images and changing levels of illumination is a cognitive drain. And you wonder why you're tired. Now, I often get asked in interviews and podcasts, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give? My answer for what you should do first is the same for everybody. Go to bed. Get a 7 solid hours of sleep, and half your problems will take care of themselves. A good night's sleep more than doubles the probability that the following day you'll solve a problem requiring insight. Yet studies show that residents average fewer than 6 hours of sleep a night. That's like coming into work drunk every day. One night of poor sleep equals a cognitive impairment on par with a blood alcohol level of 0.08. The Guinness Book of Records long ago eliminated competitions of who could stay awake the longest, given that such stunts led to severely distorted thinking and hallucinations. Again, listen to me. This is important. Sleep isn't passive. You're not lying in bed like a sack of potatoes. Your sleeping brain is metabolically highly active. It's doing three main things: consolidating memory, processing emotions, and clearing out waste products. On a rotating planet with set periods of light and dark, the sun resets our circadian pacemaker in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, our master zeitgeber or timekeeper. Every cell in your body is synchronized to it. In fact, all life forms from bacteria on up beat in time to circadian clocks that impose a 24-hour rhythm in step with geophysical time. Therefore, I urge you to respect your circadian rhythm. Don't fight it. Go to bed. It's a powerful and unrelenting biological force. Now, if our clocks didn't get reset every day, we'd never be able to adapt to the season's changing length of day, the ill-conceived idea of daylight savings time, or travel to far-flung time zones. As you progress over the 4 stages of sleep, your brain waves become slower and slower, starting from the 10 to 14 hertz of the waking alpha rhythm to the 4 hertz of stage 4 slow wave sleep. Now, what does this cycle look like? Once we hit the pillow, we descend from stage 1 to 4 and then back up again, as shown on the left. After 90 minutes, we have our first REM period of the night, marked here in red. This is when we dream. Note that as the night wears on, deep sleep of stages 3 and 4 drops off, shown here at hour 4 on the x-axis of the figure. At the same time, REM periods marked in red increase in length. You typically have the longest one just before you wake up after 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep. Now, you might think that you can stay up late and time shift this whole thing, but it doesn't work that way because you will be out of sync with your circadian clock. There is no fooling Mother Nature and such a fundamental biological force. Note that REM is not the most restorative sleep. Slow wave sleep in stages 3 and 4 is, which is what you get in the early part of the evening. Now, this guy is in the sleep lab. An overhead camera takes a photo every 7.5 minutes. You'll notice stretches where he becomes immobile, but punctuated by large shifts in body posture before and afterwards. Now, what story does this sleeper tell? First, that sleep is marked by episodes of immobility. 3 examples here being marked in red, each punctuated by major shifts in posture before becoming still again. So we do toss and turn, but only in step with the REM cycle. When couples sleep together, their brains sleep together too. That is, brain waves become entrained or synchronized to one another. Even the cat, which has a REM period of 30 minutes, falls into step. When actively dreaming, the brain takes what we have learned in one domain and it applies it to knowledge already stored in memory. Now, rows 1 and 2 for each sleeper show that the first half of the night's sleep, in the first half of the night, sleep is deep, and all bedmates exhibit little movement. The man and woman change position about every 90 minutes. On the bottom, we see that the cat changes its position about every 30 minutes, the duration of the feline sleep cycle. So when we say that two individuals are in sync, there's more truth to it than we know, because minds in a shared environment also synchronize. Biological rhythms can synchronize too, as was shown long ago. For example, college co-eds in the same dormitory started having their menstrual periods around the same time. Look what happened to this guy after his girlfriend broke up with him. His sleep is totally disrupted, illustrating the profound effect of emotion and stress. So what have we learned? First, there's no such thing as catching up on sleep. Forget sleeping in on the weekend. Aim instead to have fairly regular bedtime and wake-up times every day. The wise move is to front-load your sleep. Go to bed early because deep, restorative, slow-wave sleep dominates the first part of the night. As I've said, you can't time shift these cycles because that would put you out of sync with your circadian rhythm, which is impossible to change. Do you need to study or prepare for a presentation? Then set an alarm to wake up early. You'll perform better than if you had crammed late into the night. Now, what about blue light that you've all heard about? Blue light, made up of a range of short wavelengths, suppresses melatonin, the hormone that says, time for bed. Short wavelengths carry more energy than others that penetrate the retina. The ability of short wavelength to reset circadian rhythms is not a function of its color, however. Any photoreceptor could have evolved to register oncoming daylight and approaching darkness in the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, our ultimate timekeeper. Short wavelengths better penetrate the oceans where all life and photoreceptors first evolved. Today, low solar angles filter longer wavelengths, allowing blue light to scatter more efficiently at dusk and at dawn. Few people notice this daily change, so I want you to pay attention. The weather app on your iPhone will tell you when sunrise and sunset occur. Try to observe this change in the atmosphere that happens every day. You'll notice a change in illumination when it does as well. And once you see this natural phenomenon, you can't unsee it. Interestingly, teenagers have a naturally delayed circadian clock. Theirs is also roughly twice as sensitive to the wavelength mixture of natural light that predominates at sunrise and at the end of the day. Another problem is too many photons. Screens maddeningly give us the wrong kind of light at the wrong time of day. The first thing you should do to reduce the number of photons that bombard you is turn on the tritanopia blue-yellow filter on your smartphone. Then, after dinner, start dimming or turning off the ambient lights around you. In the book, I give steps and settings to reduce phone and TV illumination by a factor of 40 and still have a satisfactory picture. It bears repeating that mental effort exacts a metabolic cost, making us spend ATP with every decision. And after you've faced 100 small ones throughout the day, you won't have enough mental clarity left to handle the big one. To maintain the brain's physical structure, it has to be an energy hog. At only 2% of the body's weight, it nonetheless consumes 20% of our calories, and that is an astounding 3.4 times 10 to the 21st ATP molecules per minute, ATP being the fuel of the body's furnace. The high cost of maintaining resting potentials in all 86 billion neurons means that little energy is left to propel signals down axons and across synapses, the nerve discharges that actually get things done. If you're interested in this and the brain's energy plan called sparse coding, I have a short TED animation that you can Google. What percentage of your brain are you using? Decision fatigue in medicine is real, and it contributes to diagnostic errors. You read a consult, answer a text, pivot to Epic, hear someone say stat CT, check your pager, go back to Epic. That's 5 switches in 1 minute. The brain pays for this kind of inefficiency, so stop forcing it to switch between competing demands. Protect your focus as if you had a limited budget to work with, because you do. You will be more productive if you handle one thing at a time sequentially. And as for knowing when to put your device down, think about eating dinner. After a hearty meal, you reach a point of satiety and then stop. I can't eat anymore, you say. Turning down offers of sections or thirds comes easily. Now consider the endless scroll of a smartphone. You keep swiping through TikTok or hookup sites, and there's never a signal that says, stop, you've had enough. You never get the reward you're looking for. And this is how tech companies exploit positive intermittent reinforcement. Like Vegas slot machines, your phone rewards you just often enough to keep you coming back and glued to their platform. You all know about essential nutrients, the amino acids and vitamins we can't synthesize and so have to take in from the outside. I want you to think about silence as an essential nutrient too. Our distant ancestors evolved in a world that was fairly quiet, one in which not much happened. The big changes were the constellations overhead and the seasons of the year. Any change in prevailing circumstances was enough to throw the brain on alert for danger or for opportunity. It was alert to novelty on a fairly steady background, not unceasing bids for attention the way that we have today. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the absence of demands on our time, from text to push notifications and more. But modern life treats silence as if it were a vacuum that must be filled. Yet silence and downtime are where your brain integrates what it has learned and integrates your thoughts and your emotions. Residents have a terrible time finding moments of silence. The hospital is always bustling with movement and alarms. The lights are too bright. And worst of all, your time is seldom your own. Someone else is always dictating where you have to be and what you're supposed to be doing. You might retreat to the library, sit facing the wall so you're not disturbed by the coming and going of other people. You might buy a pair of cheap earplugs and give yourself some sensory deprivation, or go further and wear an eye mask. Don't worry about how you'll look. Trust me, others will leave you alone. Set your watch or your phone to buzz after 10 minutes. And then pat yourself on the back. You've just treated yourself to a dose of Nixon. An activated mind needs to unwind. You're not weak for needing to rest. You're human, and your brain is 300,000 years behind your smartphone. Here's a sobering thought. In some large cities, inhabitants' eyes have never adapted to true night vision, which takes 30 minutes of total darkness to make the shift. Incredible. Now, Nixon is a Dutch word meaning the art of doing nothing. It's not meditation, not goal-driven stillness. It's just looking out the window, at the trees, at the birds, allowing your mind to wander. You have only to do this for 3 to 5 minutes, and it's like throwing the circuit breaker on a mind overloaded with busyness. Unstructured mind wandering activates the default network, your brain's backstage crew for memory consolidation, emotional processing, creative insight, and the ability to connect the dots. The smartphone is only 18 years old, but we've trained ourselves now to fill every gap with screens during the elevator ride, the 2 minutes before rounds, even sitting on the toilet. People even watch their phones while having sex. I'm not talking about OnlyFans creators. Your brain is not and cannot be an always-on machine. It evolved to alternate between activity and stillness, input and integration, and then, after a period of distillation and reflection, output. Silence isn't a nice thing to have. It's an essential nutrient, and I know that many of you are starved for it. For your homework, I want you to go to Dumbarton Oaks at R and 31st Street. Go alone, no phone, or at least turn it off. Don't take pictures. Don't look at it through a viewfinder. Just look at it through your own eyeballs. Walk through it slowly in silence and marvel at the beauty of what you see. And then come home, reflect on the experience, and let me know how it was. I'll be waiting to hear from you. I want to switch and talk now about the growing lapse of socialization. Language, memory, and social connection all rely on face-to-face interaction, not staring at a screen. Smart devices simulate connection without us having to actually practice it. The term social media is such an oxymoron. There's nothing social about it. In fact, it's isolating and responsible for this current epidemic of loneliness, especially among adolescents and young adults. They don't know how to make small talk or handle conflict. They're terrified if the phone or the doorbell rings, accustomed instead to a text that says, "We're here." They race to the security blanket of their phone when threatened with the possibility of an actual human encounter. In medicine, every patient encounter is a two-way conversation. Lose the skill to empathize, listen attentively, converse meaningfully, and draw pertinent information out, and you risk losing the art of medicine itself. Your mirror neurons, which underline your sense of timing, empathy, and nuance, all these atrophy in a Googleized, swipe-driven culture. The hallmark of autism is a lack of social communication. For now, more than a decade, heavy screen exposure has been inducing autistic-like symptoms, and I say autistic-like, in otherwise neurotypical children. A kid engrossed on his iPad, ask a kid engrossed on his iPad a question, and you're lucky to get a grunt, never mind a phrase, let alone a full sentence. Lack of eye contact and minimal speech are typical. An acquaintance of mine whose son is engrossed in his game console says, "Noah, say hello to Dr. Cytowic." "I did," he grunts, not looking up as he continues to play and ignore me. As screen absorption goes on, there's an increasing disinterest in people and an emotional misattunement. After the fall of Nicolae Ceausescu, thousands of children were found living in severely deprived orphanages across Romania. They suffered profound social and emotional neglect. They were clothed and fed, but lacked any meaningful caregiving or face-to-face interaction. Charles Nelson at Boston Children's Hospital showed them to suffer serious delays in language development, emotional regulation, attachment formation, executive function, and IQ. Neuroimaging revealed decreased gray and white matter volumes, smaller head circumferences, and disrupted neural connectivity. Even when later adopted into nurturing environments, early deprivation left lasting scars. Now, the parallels with virtual autism in the right column are reduced eye contact, delayed speech, flattened affect, and disinterest in social play. Unlike genetic autism or developmental autism, which virtual autism is irreversible when screen exposure is eliminated and replaced with live interaction, imaginative play, and emotionally attuned caregiving. Both conditions commonly underscore the critical role of responsive face-to-face human interaction during sensitive windows of early development. The absence of such interaction, whether due to institutional neglect or screen replacement, disrupts the brain's social wiring. Here is Parker at 30 months on the left. His grandmother was distraught that he wouldn't look anyone in the eye or respond to his name. He was under evaluation for autism spectrum disorder when she wrote, "He was exposed to almost constant so-called learning programs on TV," she said, "to tech toys and computer games that supposedly teach for most of his waking hours. We enrolled him in a daycare 2 days a week for socialization without success. At the same time, I read about virtual autism, and we removed all electronic toys, phones, and children's TV. Now we play kitchen and other imaginative games. We play together with coloring books, puzzles, and Legos," she says. Soon he was responding to his name and looking at whoever was talking to him. He discovered his baby sister too. He now looks at her and plays with her too. So after 11 weeks on the right, 11 weeks without any screen media, she says he's progressing day by day. Such a reversal never happens with developmental autism, which is largely genetic. But take screens away, and virtual autism does reverse. Now, it's not just children. Extended screen immersion in adults also reduces their empathy, their mirroring, their compassion, and their interpersonal socialization. As an overworked, over-interrupted resident hooked on your own personal screens, don't think that you aren't susceptible to the symptoms of virtual autism. One of the first signs might be empathy fatigue, a diminishment of your feeling for compassion. So, congratulations on reaching the first day of your residency. You've been conditioned to grind, to hustle, to push harder. But the truth is, your Stone Age brain was never built for this much input, this much speed, this much noise. And yet, here you are in the thick of it. So, what do? Well, you realistically honor your ancient brain's design. You make peace with its inherent limits rather than fight against them. You stop acting like you're a machine that can push through obstacles by brute force, but act instead like the complex embodied human creature that you are with a Stone Age brain that's navigating a 21st century torrent of stimulation. Most of all, give yourself permission to disconnect from time to time. Protect your sleep. Welcome silence. Practice presence. And not because it's soft advice, but because it's scientific and because it just might save your mind and your peace of mind. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. There was a lot of content in there that we definitely promote at the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center, like, for instance, getting enough sleep, but a lot of new content as well. So I think hopefully we'll have some good questions. Please do use the Q&A, and we'll be using that for questions, or, you can throw them in the chat too, no big deal. We do have one question in the Q&A already. The place that you mentioned that you suggested they should go, could you tell them more about that? Remind them of where it was
Oh,
and
Dumbarton
perhaps an
Oaks?
address?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dumbarton Oaks at R and 23rd Street in Georgetown. You can walk from it from GW. It's a nice walk, or take a bike, or just drive there. It's a house, a mansion and gardens founded by Mildred and Arthur Bliss in the 1920s. It's truly stunning. He was famous for his collection of pre-Columbian gold, and he had a pavilion designed by Philip Johnson. So the house alone is worth looking at. But the gardens is where I want you to go because they were designed by Mildred Bliss, and they're marvelous little plaques in the wall with inscriptions and like there's a gardens have a humanistic have a gardens have a place in humanistic society, things like that. But each one is designed as a series of rooms, and as you're walking down each terrace of Dumbarton Oaks, they get less and less formal until finally at the bottom uh, nature merges with human artifice. You can't tell the difference between what's a garden and what's the woods, what's Rock Creek forest. And there's one of the pictures I showed you there is one of my absolute, when I first saw it back in the 70s, it took my breath away. It's an aerial hedge made of European hornbeams, and it's just absolute stillness there. And so when I first saw it, I sat down, I had my journal with me, and I just journaled while I was, sitting on this beautiful landscape and with a small fountain in the center. So if you want to get a boost for your soul, I recommend going there.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Time in nature is always time well spent.
Well, it's an antidote too. I mean, we need this kind of silence, and there's an amphitheater there in the beginning, and you know it's sort of natural and just low brick walls, and the rest is all just plants and all that. And there have been giving performances there, but I mean, the place is endlessly fascinating. Um, I had a friend who worked there actually. He worked in the library there, and so he could get us invited. So we would have cocktail hour on the balconies, terraces after closing hours, or we would go in the winter, one winter in January when the winter jasmine was blooming, and we took a little basket of muffins and a thermos of coffee and sat there in the sunlight and cold, just enjoying it.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Excellent. One other question, this is a very good one. How do you prioritize sleep with a residency call schedule?
Well, you prioritize it on the days that you're not on call, for starters. And then when are on call, there's not much you can do. And that's why being well rested on your off-call days are going to be a godsend for you, because then it's gonna give you the reserve that you can they will need when you are on call. Now, you may have some blessed days when you never get a call to do anything, and you're left alone to read or do whatever. But you'll have more resiliency, is what I'm saying, if you are able to have off-call nights that are on a regular schedule.
Absolutely. Another one, and this is also really, these are excellent questions. Comment please on schools phasing out cursive and basic writing for kids. Teachers say handwriting is no longer necessary. Children's use screens.
Oh, I have a whole chapter on that, on handwriting. Three fingers may be involved in writing, but the entire brain is engaged. Three areas in particular. And yeah, first of all, it's much faster than printing. So printing really slows you down. And then I tell my medical students in the practice of medicine course, I say, put your laptops and iPads away. Please don't take notes on your iPad. Take notes by hand if you want to, or don't take notes at all. I mean, I can't force them to do one thing or the other. But what happens is that when you start taking notes on an iPad or a laptop, you end up transcribing the lecture. So basically, it's just going in one ear and out the other and out your fingers, and you're not really listening or absorbing the content of that. Whereas when you take notes, you're just jotting down a phrase or something, and then later after class or in the evening when you're reviewing your notes, you go back and see what you said, and then where you have trouble with the content, that tells you what you didn't understand. So yeah, it's a shame that cursive is on the way out. I mean, kids can't read their grandparents, greeting cards and letters and all that. Um, Farney's, the pen store here in DC on F Street, they teach cursive classes, and they're always sold out. Kids want to learn how to write with a fountain pen with real ink, um, and the demand is really high. The uh, the place was I think in Danbury, Connecticut, the Historical Society was worried that people wouldn't be able to read what's in their archives because none of it's digitized. And so they advertised for, learn to read cursive. Well, again, the interest was outstanding. And two boys came across not a postcard, but a short letter from somebody who had the same last name as them and said, I think we found a relative, So they were really thrilled in being able to read this stuff, from 100 years ago.
That's wonderful.
So yes,
Okay.
I'm a big fan of cursive.
What about melatonin?
Well, melatonin is the hormone that says it's time to go to bed. Um, And there are melatonin supplements that one can take in the evening, 5 or 10 or even 20 milligrams. Some people show that in cancer patients, they actually help with the cancer. So that's what melatonin does. But, there are, you don't really need to take supplements, just paying attention to the normal flow of light and darkness is enough to stimulate it.
Yeah, though I would add that it's helpful for jet lag. So you can get onto
Well,
your
yes, yes.
new schedule.
Yeah. And then as far as jet lag, 'cause, when you get to in your position, walk around and look up at the sun, look up at the
Absolutely.
sky, get those photons coming in, and that's going to help reset you to the local time. Also, um, eat and go to bed at the local time schedule that you're in. So if I go to DC to California or to Europe, I mean, my circadian clock is way behind my body, my what the local time says.
Yeah, I agree. I'm currently in California, and that's exactly what I did. I flew in and I got outside and I walked around and got lots of sunshine exposure. And I tried to eat on the California schedule, and it was, I was right there. Now,
Yeah,
the other way is a little harder. So we'll see how I do with that.
it is. Yes, going west to east is always hardest.
Yeah, great. Can napping serve as silence exposure?
Yes, it can. So long as you aren't surrounded by a noisy environment and alarms going off and all that. Um, but yes, it can. And of course, napping is okay. You don't want to do too much of it, but I think if you're in a busy residence schedule, you're already fatigued and your energy is low to begin with. You may be eating too much junk food. A nap is a great idea. And as I said, a set of earplugs and a sleep mask are absolutely terrific. So just set your watch or your phone to buzz after 15, 20 minutes, and you're good to go.
Agree with that. Okay. Himmelfarb Library has Dr. Sidowicz' book. So if you are in Himmelfarb, you can just go get it right now and read it.
They have
Thank you
all
for
my
that,
books.
Laura. There
Yeah,
you go.
they have all my books. So
Um, I have taught my grandkids cursive with a workbook and tracing paper. Thanks for confirming my question and belief in writing skills.
I think
Uh,
that's great. Yeah, yeah, there are workbooks, teach yourself graphic. So when I was in grade school, I mean, we had the alphabet pinned around the top above the blackboards, little a, big, and small and large letters, and we would practice, tracing. And the thing is that what the kids are learning is you've got a pattern that you're looking at, and then you're trying to align your motor movements to mimic that. And each time it's different. So unlike tracing, which is going to be, pretty much identical every time, when you're doing it freehand, it's never quite the same. And so
mm,
you're tuning these patterns in your brain.
good tip. Thank you.
My
Back to
mother
call
had,
schedule.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, my mother had gorgeous handwriting, and her shorthand looked gorgeous as well. Even in her 90s, she had this beautiful, beautiful handwriting, unlike mine. The doctor's handwriting.
Yeah, I also don't have good
I
handwriting.
when I
Something.
the night before I began my internship, I practiced signing my name because I knew I'd have to sign it, 50 times a day, and I practiced signing it with the fewest possible strokes. And what made me do that is I remember my father at the dinner table who would take out a pad of prescription blanks, and he'd pre-sign them all, and to
Oh
save
gosh.
time when he was with patients. So anyway, you got a
That's a little
question?
dangerous, but also understandable because your time
Well,
is limited.
but we're talking back in the 50s and 60s, so he had them in his pocket. Uh,
Right. Okay, back to call schedule. Surgeons don't have off days. Off means the day ends at 9 p.m., but always starts with 5 a.m. pre-rounds. How about pre-meditations or tapping? Can you supercharge in a few minutes?
Um, I didn't, what's it, can you, how about pre what? Was it premeditation?
How about brief
Oh,
meditations,
brief
tapping,
meditation. Yes, meditation is always good. I've practiced a Zen type of meditation for many, many years, and there's this wonderful video where the priest has said, everybody complains that they don't have any time, and says, but everybody has 30 seconds, and you have a place where you stick your keys in your wallet. And so just before you go out the door, you take a stick of incense and you tap it to your forehead and you say, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha, homage to the Buddha. And there, you've just done 15 seconds of meditation. You can learn to meditate at red lights or while waiting in line in the cafeteria or at the bank.
or on the
Yeah,
elevator?
on the elevator. There are places, and my kind of meditation is you keep your eyes open. You never, if you closing your eyes invites your mind to wander um, and daydream. So just pick a spot on the elevator, one of the buttons, and you just look at it, and you just sort of filter out everything else that's around you. The example I use is imagine yourself sitting under a bridge, and the distinction is between natural thought and deliberate thought. So you're sitting under a bridge, and all these cars are going by, and so you just let them. You don't chase after them. But if you start saying, "Oh, look, there's a Volvo, there's a Ford Ram, there's a this, there's a that," then that is deliberate thought. You're chasing after it, and you don't want to do that. You just let it go. The same way, if you're sitting there and your leg itches, well, you just let it itch. There's no need for you to scratch it. Or if you say, "Oh, a dog barks. Oh, that dog is ruining my meditation." Well, the dog is barking, and you can still meditate, just as you can meditate standing in line or at a red light. So I think for the
Absolutely.
surgeon, I mean, look, are you sure you sure you want to do surgery? That is such a grueling.
It is a grueling
Oh,
one.
you poor thing. So, my sympathy, I really empathize with you. But yes, finding little spots to what I call throw that circuit breaker. Dr. Omaya of the Omaya Reservoir that you put into the ventricles, he had a Catholic mother and a Sunni father, and he learned to like go to the mosque and look at the tiles, which were basically like Necker cubes, and then train himself to flip the perspective one way or the other. And that was one of his kinds of meditations that he did in very, very busy circumstances. And he was one of the most calm surgeons I've ever met.
I worked in surgery for a number of years, and I've heard many surgeons say that they actually find certain procedures to be quite meditative.
Yes,
So I think you can sort of think outside the box and figure out what works for you.
you make your own little routine. Yeah, because when there's certain procedures, well, it's like cooking.
Right.
In the OR, things are like a procedure, and if you just follow them without getting uh, snagged by everything else that's going on around you. Filter your mind, focus on what you're doing one step at a time, one thing at a time. That's a great way to sharpen your focus and your attention. Otherwise, you're going to flit all over the place.
Oh, this is a great question. I'm very interested in your answer in this. What is your view on white noise machines when sleeping? Does this disrupt any sleep stages?
I don't know. I don't have any experience with them. People say they work. They can be they can be useful. For example, I have one of those Blue air filters in my bedroom, and I turn it on before I go to bed, and so there's that sound of the fan, and so I guess that's white noise. And yeah, if it's not on, it feels weird if it's not on. So I
Hmm.
think I know I sleep like a rock. So I think probably it does. The white noise machines aren't going to disturb any of your sleep stages. I don't know for sure. I don't know if any research has been done on this, so I can't.
Yeah, there's been one study actually, and it was looking at different types of noises. So there, there's white noise, brown noise, pink noise.
Oh,
And
right,
it
that.
found that for some people, white noise actually can disrupt their sleep.
Yeah.
But pink noise seems to be, at least according to this study, less disruptive. So maybe if
I
you're looking for something and you have an app, use the pink
Yeah,
noise
I
instead of the
read
white.
about that white, brown, and pink noise. I read that paper some time ago. Interesting. So if you have a white noise machine, think about maybe trading it in or
There you go.
getting the app for the pink noise. Besides, pink noise sounds so much more, I don't
It
know,
does sound nice.
cozy. It sounds
It does.
more enveloping, like cotton
Warm,
candy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the sunset. Yeah. So thank you for the talk. In terms of socialization, is there a difference between socializing with family members or friends? I'm assuming this is going back to kids.
Going back to kids, well, essentially, as long as you're socializing in person, it's great. But you know what parents and grandparents are doing with kids is there's a lot of mirror imaging and mirror play. Whether you're playing games like, So Big or, hide and seek, um, they're learning theory of mind. Um, and I think they're also learning attachment. This is John Bowlby's attachment theory. And there's three kinds. There's secure attachment, avoidant attachment, and ambivalent attachment. And so I think socializing with family is going to be much more conducive in the early stages of development of establishing a firm sense of attachment. In which adults are available when needed and can step in and protect the child as necessary. There's a one in the book. I look up in the index the still face experiment, which is the PBS had I'm sorry, the NewsHour had a thing on this where the mother's looking at the phone and the kid's saying, "Look up, mommy, mommy, we have something important to do. Mommy, you're not paying attention, mommy." Well, the kids just give up because they're not getting that kind of one-on-one attention. Uh, it's very sad. I know it used to be when phones were on the countertop or bolted to the wall that mommy could look at you when she's on the phone and hold up a finger saying, "Wait a minute, I'll be right with you." But she was looking at you. But now when she's staring at her phone and doesn't even give you answer any of your bids for attention, that poor kid is just going to be so disappointed and brokenhearted.
Hmm,
So for
that is heartbreaking.
young people, yes, socialize with your family, with with relatives. We're close into your courtesy aunts and uncles. Um, that's going to be great. But then you also want to learn how to play with other people, with other kids. Where you make up your own rules. You learn how to negotiate, take turns. All that stuff is extremely important. These are great questions, by the way.
They really are, aren't they? I think we may have run out. Does anyone else have a question? So please put it in the chat. I guess one of the questions I have is, uh, I think it's different for those of us who grew up without these tools than people who have. And how do people who don't know any other way sort of buck the culture of always having a phone and every minute checking your phone? And do you think that's more difficult than those of us who didn't grow up with it?
I'm going to leave that to parents, but I don't think I mean, I don't know how you do that. Because they really are addicted. I remember my nephew took away the iPad from my grandnephew, and the kid tore the house apart trying to find out where he had hidden it. That's how addicted he was to, "I've got to have this phone. I've got to have the screen." The term for that is nomophobia, the fear of being without your smartphone. There's been many studies done where, when students and all of that, You tell them to put it face down or put it in another room, and they become extremely anxious if, after just a few minutes of not being in the presence of their phone. So,
Wow. Whereas I love leaving my phone at home, and any excuse for a digital detox, I am in.
I mean, but I think those of us who didn't grow up this way are still very vulnerable. I mean, for years,
Mm,
my husband and I had track phones, and then we were in New York trying to find a certain place, and we couldn't find it. And this is a city that's
right.
set up on a grid, for goodness sake. So we looked at each other and said, "We've got to have an iPhone, if only for the maps."
Right.
So within a day or two of playing with my new phone, I said, "Oh my God, I see why these are so addictive. This is positive intermittent reinforcement. It's a slot machine
Mhm.
in my hand." And so I'm just as susceptible to this as anybody else, but hopefully I have enough wherewithal and resiliency to say, "Okay, stop, enough, put it down, turn it
Mhm.
off." And that's what you have to do. And how you get kids to do this, I don't know. It might be they get to the point where they're so addicted that you have to send them to one of these um, camps like Restart, which takes away, gives them a washout period. It takes away all their devices. They have to talk with one another and with the counselors. Um, and after just a few days, one experiment showed 5 days without any kind of devices, these kids showed a remarkable change in their ability to start socializing with one another. The more severe ones, I'm thinking of China's Daxing camp, which is famous. It may take, a week or a month or two to sort of unbrainwash these kids.
Yeah, and for the rest of us who maybe are just busy and not quite as acutely addicted, one of the things that I generally recommend, and my husband and I do, is whenever you have an opportunity to completely turn it off, right? If we go camping, we tell all of our friends and family, look, we're going to be here. We're going to be here from this period of time, and we are not going to have cell phone access.
We're not going to be available.
And
Yeah.
it is really remarkable. Just, I live with my husband. We have a lot of interactions, but that time is different. There is something more, you're more connected when you don't, even just having the phone in your pocket, it seems to make a difference.
The other thing about camping is that you're exposed to natural daylight for whatever the
Right.
duration of that period is. And if you're working by campfire, which is great because that's long wave light as well, and that's all good for you.
Excellent. Let's see, we did a couple questions come in here. Work environment also demands constant online email and text response as the expectation. That's a very good point. It is the expectation. And perhaps we need to shift the culture, but what can we do
Yeah.
in the meantime?
Who is expecting this? That's the question, is who's demanding this kind of expectation? I mean, it's going to be really hard for a resident to say, "I'm sorry, I'm not available for the next 15 minutes." Uh, yeah, I used to do that when I was an intern. I would go to the sub basement of the library where the page operator's signal didn't get down, and I would spend 5 or 10 minutes looking at all the old dusty titles that nobody checked out. I mean, that's how I discovered synesthesia. I came across a book called The Mind of a Mnemonist
Mm,
about a memory expert who had a five-fold synesthesia. And so, yeah, you can decide not to you can not decide not to answer immediately, or you can give yourself 15-minute windows in which you're going to respond to stuff. So let's say you're going to do it on the quarter hour. Well, if something comes in at 12:05, well, you wait until 12:15 to respond to it. Unless it's your
mhm,
chairman, then you sort of have to. But if part of you know part of the answer may be talking to these people and saying, this is a real interruption. I remember the medical students that when in the first year of POM, I said, what bothers them the most? And they said it wasn't the study or the work, and because they knew they got to do it, but what bothered them were, quote, all these goddamn messages from the administration of be here, be there, do this, do that. It drove them crazy. It made them really, really
mhm.
anxious because they got one text after another. Uh, So when I was a resident, we had a Tuesday afternoon conference that lasted 3 hours. All the different clinical neuro disciplines. But we'd get beeped by the admissions office. Oh, yeah, Dr. Cytowic, you have an admissions, and so we'd have to get up and so I told the chief resident, I said, can you ask Dr. Toole to maybe have a policy of a no admissions on Tuesday afternoon so that we can all attend the conference because it's eating into this educational activity. And guess what? They said, oh my God, what a good idea. We didn't know. So that became the policy, and everybody was able to sit there throughout 3 or 4 hours of these clinical conferences in the neuro disciplines, and it was great. So,
I love that. That's
they
wonderful.
piled them on, and we became much more efficient. So they piled on Monday admissions. We did all the orders and the workups and all that, and so then they were on automatic pilot. And then on Wednesday we could pick up the ball and see all the test results and their angiograms and their radiology and stuff. And so a lot of these people were ready to be discharged by Friday. So
There you go. That's a perfect process.
yeah, I'm sure that the hospital financial people didn't like it, but it was great. So
Yeah, the other thing I would add is that my
so
understanding is that a lot of the youth think that email is like a text message and that it's supposed to be time sensitive, and it's not, right? Email is not an instantaneous communication. Email is like as you have time, which means it doesn't have to be within 5 minutes of receipt.
and you don't necessarily have to answer it. It depends on what it says. If it's
True.
really informative, there's no need to say, "Okay, thanks, I got this." You don't bother with that.
Right, absolutely. Save the time. All right, one last question here. Is there a safer age to begin smartphone exposure? Is later always better?
Later is always better. And the argument that, oh, they're going to need this technology. And well, by the time they're going to need the technology in school or work, the technology will have changed three or four times over. The American Academy of Pediatrics says no screen exposure before the age of 2. And if you do it, it should be with the parent sitting by their side. The Waldorf schools, of which there's one here in DC, they don't have any technology until I think age 12 or so. And the kids don't mind; they're busy doing other things, and hands-on kind of stuff, crafts and music and whatnot, and athletics. It's the parents that say, "Oh, but we need to be in touch." Well, you do what, parents of yesteryear did. If you need to get in touch with the kid, then call the principal's office and say, "I need to get a message to so and so," and they'll relay a message to the kid.
Yeah,
So
that's a
yeah,
good point. You
and
probably don't need to be in touch with your 12-year-old
yeah,
every
and I
minute of
think
every
that
day.
this constant "I need to be in touch" is induces anxiety in them, really. Leave them alone. Let them have a childhood. Leave them alone. I mean,
That
yeah,
seems like a
I went to school and we just needed, we went out riding our bikes and this and went and played in the woods and all that. You just had to be home in time for dinner or whenever the street lights came on, and that was it. But we did all kinds of dangerous things too. We rode our bikes without a helmet. We drank water from a hose. Uh,
yes.
and I'm still alive. So
Yes, we all survived. So
yeah.
excellent. And maybe we need to get a little bit back. There's some things that we've learned, like for instance, bike helmets, probably a good idea. But screen time, we probably don't need so much of that.
Yeah, it's screen time is not an essential nutrient.
Yes. Excellent. Well, okay, that is the perfect place to end. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful discussion, and thank you everyone for all of your excellent questions.
They were great
If you
questions.
haven't heard, the recording will be available. All of you will get an email with it, but it's on the GW Resiliency and Wellbeing Center's YouTube channel, which you can find on our website. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.